Commercial real estate. Is it the new low-hanging fruit? Stay tuned. We're going to tell you more why you should buy commercial real estate.
It's a love story, baby, just say yes.
We're as passionate as the Swifties on this topic.
That's why I've got this cap on. Can you read it?
Cash.
Cash cow.
Cash cow.
Perfect for this episode. Perfect for this episode.
It really is. So, I guess we're just gonna give people the numbers this morning, the truth. They don't know.
And you know what? It's a lot of people I think have this appetite for a different asset class of property, but they're just not familiar with it. They haven't gone there before, and they're like, you know what? I'm not sure if I buy a 1-bedroom unit or a 2-bedroom unit, or what about commercial? Like they say to themselves, what about it? What about if I did it? What about if I had to go and bought like something, and they're attracted to commercial, but they just don't understand it. And I thought, because we are so exposed in our business to it, to commercial leasing, commercial renting, to storage facilities, to warehouses, to development sites, to all these different types of properties, it was like, let's have a talk about it, because just to give people that familiarity, at the very least, of investing in commercial and what it consists of.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, before I had the exposure throughout the business to different class of assets, commercial to me just sounded like a shop space. It sounded, maybe a little bit, a little bit too far-fetched. It sounded like big money. Only big established landlords and investors would get into commercial. Often it sounded like you needed a bigger deposit, so it was harder to get involved and be a part of. Whereas residential,
which is true,
easy.
Which is true. I think that probably the biggest concern people have with commercial is the vacancies. They think that it's not as easy to rent as a residential, and when it does come up for rent, it's not as regular, but it's vacant for longer. So, some of these shops can be vacant for 1, 2, or 3 months, 6 or 12 months. But I've got to say, a lot of that's the decision of the landlord, that they're really just trying to get that super high rent, and that they really don't care about vacancy. But when you're driving your local hood and you're seeing that property vacant all the time, you don't know whether that's the asset class that's not performing, or whether that's the owner that's actually just trying to really push that rental price in the market, and they don't care about the vacancy.
Yeah, that's very true. And is that normal to see across everything? So we're talking about storage this morning, guys, and we're gonna show you some examples of some low-hanging fruit you can get involved in. But is that normal to see?
I think storage or warehouses, I'd like to talk about the figures that I've given you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's both of them that are sitting in there, and they're both really, really important things to consider in the market. I like the long-term view, and I do have to say, in people's property cycle of investment, their attitude and their necessity for money changes. When people are in their 20s and 30s, they really want to build up the equity. You can't spend equity. So when people are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, they'll often go for that asset class of residential, because it's doubling, quite comfortably particularly northern beaches, particularly Sydney. It's doubling quite comfortably every sort of 8 to 10 years over, 50 or 100 years. But what happens is you can't spend that money unless you retire the asset, unless you sell the property. So a lot of people then turn that attitude over to commercial. Why?
You tell me.
Because it's got more of a disposable income, i.e. the rent, i.e. the yield. So what starts to happen is with residential, your rent coming in, you pay all your bills. You may be left with a 3%, 2%, 3% return on your money. Whereas commercial, if you can often be left with, 7, 8, 9, or 10, percent return on your money. So for the amount of cash that you put in, um,
Yep.
they say the capital growth is not as strong in commercial, and they say the rental return or the yield that it returns is stronger in commercial. So as people get older, they're like, man, whether I have sort of 1, 2, or 3 million in the bank, it doesn't really matter. I need money to spend. I need money when I'm in my, 60s and 70s to be
Yep.
able to, when I'm not working, to spend, to buy a car, to take a holiday, to help, help the, to take the grant. They need disposable cash, and the pension's not enough.
But what's interesting is we've seen some really good case studies with some local commercial storage and warehouse. We'll, as I said, focus on the warehouses this morning that have had growth as strong as the residential sector. If not, maybe even tipped the edge and gone a little bit stronger.
Bloody
So
impressive.
it's really, really, yeah, really, 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 really impressive.
Would you happen to have those available for us to look at, Billy?
The numbers,
Oh.
or you want the photos?
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Wow. So what's this?
Explain what we're looking at.
Okay. You want me to?
Yeah.
All right. So I did this project with my daughter on Saturday, who's started working in real estate. And I asked her, I said, listen, we're selling some warehouses in French's Forest. And she knew the warehouses we're selling. And I said, can you grab the last development that this developer built, the last warehouses that have sold in there? So she said, what do you mean? I said, well, 47 Villiers was the last development that Trend Omni had built. Can you show me who's sold in there since it was built? And can you show me how much value they've earned in growth? Because traditionally people say you do not get as much of a growth on commercial because you're actually getting a really good rent on it.
Yeah. And that's the breakdown. So all of these are commercial grade, obviously, big warehouse, ranging between 100 and nearly 400 square meters. You've got purchases from as early as 2017 through to 2021, and then most of the current resales were at the mid 2023. So at the top there, as strong as 73% capital growth over that 2019 to 2023 period is just unbelievable. Really, really impressive. And you look at all the resales. I mean, they've all made money, but if you took an average there, that would certainly be on par with the residential sector. And this is in Chroma.
I love that. Like, I just think if these guys have bought a factory, and I'll tell you where some of the magic was in that, is that when they put the deposit down, it didn't get built for 2, 3 years down the track. So they only put down 10%. So the story got even better, where the actual ownership of that property was not as long as it looked there. So they're buying them for 500,000. At the time when they were buying them for 500,000, people were saying they were not cheap, but they're buying them for 500,000. And you can see now they're selling them for, on average, they were selling for $1 million now. Well, I know now if you're buying one there, you're spending $1 million. So, you're putting down 50 grand in that example. Not paying anything more for a couple of years. It then settles. It then rents. The rental returns were pretty good. So the rental returns they started getting were around that sort of 7% return, 8% return when they were actually had to be rented. So when we first started saying we're going to, when there were people buying, we're going, oh, I reckon you're going to get it rented for 25, 30 grand. and then it was actually more like 40 grand, 45 grand. So the rental returns were very good. The capital growth was very good. That was a commercial example in Cromer, which was not a heavily desired suburb at the time, but it certainly is now. I think we covered commercial real estate pretty well. Do you want to show us a couple of photos before you go?
Yeah, well, we've got a new one coming up in Warriewood. So here's an example of what you can buy. It's in, what would you call it? It's not exactly the fit out stage.
That's what you're buying. Good photo to start with, Billy. It's great. Yeah. Pick the best one there.
Let me start with another one.
Okay, that's better. Okay, so here we go. So this is just you nailed that. So this is in right near Monova Pittwater RSL Club, only a couple hundred meters away. And you can see there's sort of 2 stories in there. You can see it's a small building. There's probably only about 20 of them in there. I've just sold 3 in the last week. So to give you an idea, that back left one just went for about 1.4. That was one of the biggest ones in there. And apparently the guy there is going to be putting a triple. So it's a double car triple stack, so double wide but goes up 3 high, and a single car triple stack. So within a very small space, he's going to be storing 9 cars, and then he's got the whole warehouse left over.
Wow.
So it's a pretty cool, really, really funky. And what they did different with these ones to the last ones that were built in Cromer is they put those mezzanines or those offices above the car spaces, rather than pushing them through the whole of the inside of the factory. So it gave you more room inside the factory, and they're high bay. So they're 5.4 high, enough to stack a car 3 high.
Wow. That's a bit of an overlook. And this is in the fit out stage. So no, this is not what a finished product looks like, but it's nice for you to see actually. I guess
believe it or not, they're going to be finished in 6 weeks.
Amazing. So they're concrete's down, still stairs up, mezzanine's going in now. They're pretty spunky fit outs. Don't be alarmed. That's certainly not the finished product.
Like something out of Chernobyl. Yeah.
Nice to see.
All right, well that's commercial development. I hope this helped people out there just looking at a different asset class and understanding it a little bit differently.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good day, guys.
Bye.